Unit 731 was a top-secret operation. It was run by the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II. Its activities were hidden from the world. The unit was officially called the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department, but this name was a lie. It was a cover for its real sinister purpose. The truth about Unit 731 is horrifying. It reveals a dark chapter in human history. We must remember what happened there. The main facility was located in Pingfang, a district in Harbin, China. This part of China was then occupied by Japan and called Manchukuo. The remote location helped keep its work secret. The Japanese military invested heavily in this site. They built a large, sprawling complex. Few knew what truly occurred behind its walls. The secrecy was vital to their plans. The local population lived in fear. The scale of Unit 731 was immense. Thousands of people became its victims. These victims were subjected to unimaginable experiments. The unit aimed to develop biological weapons. They also conducted other cruel human experiments. For decades, the full extent of these horrors remained concealed. Many governments were complicit in this silence. The truth was suppressed for political reasons, making justice hard to find. Uncovering the truth about Unit 731 has been a long process. It has taken decades of work. Historians, survivors, and activists have pushed for answers. Japan was slow to acknowledge these war crimes. The details are disturbing, but understanding Unit 731 is crucial. It helps us learn from the past. It reminds us of the depths of human cruelty. It also shows the importance of accountability. The central figure behind Unit 731 was Shiro Ishii. He was a microbiologist in the Japanese army. Ishii was intelligent and ambitious. He strongly believed in biological warfare. He saw it as a powerful tool for Japan. He thought it could help Japan win wars. His vision was dark and dangerous. He pursued it with great determination. He would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. In the late 1920s and early 1930s, Ishii traveled. He visited research institutions in the West. He studied biological and chemical warfare programs. He returned to Japan with a plan. He convinced the military leadership. He argued that Japan needed these weapons. He received significant funding and support. The military saw potential in his ideas. They gave him the resources he needed. This was the start of a terrible program. The first major step was the Zhongma Fortress. This was an experimental prison camp. It was also known as the Togo Unit. It was established in Manchuria in the early 1930s. Here, Ishii and his team began their research. They conducted early human experiments. The results were horrific. The program quickly expanded. This led to the creation of Unit 731. The operations grew larger and more organized. Manchuria was chosen for several reasons. It was under Japanese control. This offered a secure base of operations. There were abundant natural resources. Crucially, there was a large population. This population could be used for experiments. Prisoners of war and local civilians became victims. They were powerless against the Japanese military machine. The remote location also helped maintain secrecy. This was essential for Ishii's work. The official purpose of Unit 731 was deceptive. It was stated to be for epidemic prevention. It was also said to be for water purification. These were important public health concerns. However, this was just a cover story. The real purpose was far more sinister. Unit 731 was dedicated to research. It focused on offensive biological and chemical warfare. This was its true hidden mission. Its scientists worked on deadly germs. A massive complex was built at Pingfang. It was like a small city. It had advanced laboratories and testing grounds. There were prisons for human subjects. There were also breeding facilities for rats and fleas. These animals were used to spread diseases. The entire facility was designed for secrecy. High walls and armed guards surrounded it. What happened inside was meant to stay hidden. The Japanese government poured vast resources into Pingfang. Top scientists and medical personnel were recruited. Many were from Japan's leading universities. They were experts in their fields. Their knowledge was twisted for evil purposes. Instead of healing, they caused immense suffering. They participated in horrific experiments. Ethics were completely abandoned. This was a profound perversion of science and medicine. The pursuit of weapons overshadowed all morality. These professionals became tools of war. The initial operations focused on identifying potent pathogens. They wanted to find the deadliest germs. Diseases like plague were studied extensively. Anthrax and cholera were also key areas of research. Scientists infected human subjects with these diseases, they observed the progression of the illnesses, they documented the suffering and death. This data was used to develop biological weapons. The goal was to make these diseases more effective killers. Unit 731 used live human subjects for its experiments. These people were referred to as Maruta. The word Maruta means logs in Japanese. This term was used to dehumanize the victims. It made it easier for the researchers to commit atrocities. If the subjects were not seen as human, their suffering mattered less. This dehumanization was a deliberate tactic. It was part of the psychological conditioning of the staff. Victims lost their names and identities. The victims came from various backgrounds. Most were Chinese civilians and prisoners of war. There were also Soviet prisoners. Some Koreans and Mongolians were victims too. Men, women, and even children were subjected to experiments. No one was spared. They were captured or arrested on false charges. They were then transported to Unit 731. Their fate was sealed once they entered the facility. Escape was impossible for these unfortunate souls. One common type of experiment involved disease injections. Victims were deliberately infected with deadly pathogens. Scientists would then observe them. They studied how diseases like plague, typhoid, and cholera affected the human body. The victims received no medical treatment. They were left to suffer excruciating symptoms. Autopsies, sometimes on live subjects, were performed. This was done to see the internal effects of the diseases. Other experiments tested the limits of human endurance. Victims were exposed to extreme cold. This was to study frostbite. Some had limbs amputated without anesthesia. Others were subjected to high pressure in chambers. They were exposed to lethal doses of X-rays. Grenades and flamethrowers were tested on human targets. Chemical weapons were also used. The aim was always to measure effectiveness. This was done by observing human suffering and death. Section 5: Vivisection and Weaponized Pathogens. The depths of Unit 731's research. Vivisections were a common practice at Unit 731. These were performed on live human subjects. Often the victims were conscious. They were not given any anesthesia. The researchers wanted to study organs. They wanted to see how diseases affected them. They also studied the effects of trauma. These procedures caused unimaginable pain and terror. The victims were treated as mere biological specimens. Their humanity was completely disregarded. Frostbite experiments were particularly brutal. Researchers exposed victims' limbs to extreme cold. They would freeze arms and legs solid. Then they would try different methods to thaw them. Sometimes they used hot water. Sometimes they left them to thaw naturally. The purpose was to study gangrene. They wanted to understand tissue decay. Often the affected limbs were amputated. This was also done without anesthetic. The suffering was immense. Unit 731 worked hard to develop germ bombs. Shiro Ishii himself designed special ceramic bombs. These bombs were filled with plague-infected fleas. The ceramic shells were designed to shatter. This would release the fleas over a wide area. These weapons were field-tested. They were dropped on Chinese cities and villages. This caused outbreaks of plague. Many innocent civilians died as a result of these attacks. This was biological warfare in action. The unit also attempted to weaponize other diseases. Typhoid and dysentery were spread through contaminated water sources. They poisoned wells and rivers. Cholera was another disease they tried to weaponize. Food supplies were contaminated. The goal was to cause epidemics. They wanted to weaken enemy populations. They also wanted to disrupt military operations. These methods were cruel and indiscriminate. They caused widespread suffering among civilians. Section 6: Echoes of Evil, Unit 731 and Nazi Atrocities, a grim comparison. The horrors of Unit 731 have parallels. We see similar cruelty in Nazi Germany. The Nazi concentration camps were sites of terrible suffering. Doctors like Josef Mengele conducted inhuman experiments. He experimented on prisoners at Auschwitz. Both Unit 731 and Nazi doctors abused medical knowledge. They both used dehumanization as a tool. This allowed them to commit unspeakable acts. Science was twisted to serve ideology. However, there were some differences. The scale of the Holocaust was vast. Millions were systematically exterminated in Nazi death camps. Unit 731's primary focus was different. It centered on biological and chemical warfare research. The number of direct victims at Unit 731 was in the thousands. Perhaps tens of thousands if field tests are included. The Nazi regime also conducted a wider variety of experiments. but both systems were built on racial supremacy and brutality. Both Unit 731 and the Nazi atrocities represent state-sponsored evil. Governments planned and funded these crimes. They involved highly educated people. Doctors, scientists, and military officers participated. They violated every principle of human dignity. They betrayed the core tenets of medicine. The Hippocratic Oath, "First do no harm," was ignored. Instead, they inflicted maximum harm. This is a chilling reminder of what humans can do. Another shared characteristic was the attempt to hide their crimes. As World War II ended, both regimes tried to destroy evidence. The Nazis tried to demolish gas chambers. Unit 731 personnel killed remaining prisoners. They burned documents and blew up buildings. This made it harder to uncover the full truth. It also made it more difficult to bring perpetrators to justice. The world struggled to comprehend such evil. Many perpetrators escaped punishment. Section 7. The Cover-Up and the Deal. Justice denied for Unit 731 victims. As World War II drew to a close, Japan faced defeat. The leaders of Unit 731 knew they had to act fast. They began a systematic cover-up. Remaining prisoners, the Maruda, were killed. This was to eliminate living witnesses. Buildings within the Pingfang complex were dynamited. Records and research materials were burned. Shiro Ishii ordered his staff to take the secrets to the grave. He wanted to erase all traces of their horrific work. The United States played a controversial role after the war. American occupation forces arrived in Japan. General Douglas MacArthur was in charge. He made a fateful decision regarding Unit 731. Shiro Ishii and his top researchers were captured. However, they were not prosecuted as war criminals. Instead, they were offered a deal. The United States wanted their research data. This data was on biological warfare. It was considered valuable for American military programs. In exchange for their research findings, Ishii and his team received immunity. They were shielded from prosecution by the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. This was the Tokyo War Crimes Trial. The deal was kept secret for many years. It meant that those responsible for horrific experiments escaped justice. The victims and their families were denied closure. This decision remains highly controversial. It prioritized strategic advantage over moral accountability. While the US granted immunity, the Soviet Union took a different approach. They captured some Unit 731 personnel in Manchuria. In December 1949, the Soviets held the Khabarovsk war crimes trials. 12 Japanese military personnel were prosecuted. They were found guilty of conducting biological warfare. They received prison sentences. However, these trials were largely dismissed in the West. They were seen as Soviet propaganda during the Cold War. The full truth was still suppressed. Section 8. Scars on Humanity. The lingering impact on survivors and international relations. Very few individuals survived the direct experiments of Unit 731. Those who were imprisoned there usually died. However, people in areas targeted by biological attacks suffered greatly. Some survived these induced epidemics. They carried physical and psychological scars for life. Their stories are harrowing. For many years they found it difficult to speak out. The trauma was immense. The world was often unwilling to listen to their pain. The legacy of Unit 731 has deeply affected Sino-Japanese relations. It remains a major point of contention between the two nations. China views it as one of Japan's worst wartime atrocities. There have been persistent demands for a full apology. Victims groups also seek compensation from the Japanese government. Japan's official acknowledgement of Unit 731 was slow. This has fueled resentment and distrust. The wounds are still open for many Chinese people. Historians, activists, and journalists have worked tirelessly. They have sought to expose the full truth of Unit 731. They have gathered testimonies from former unit members. They have interviewed victims of biological attacks. They have uncovered documents and physical evidence. This work has been crucial in combating denial. It ensures that these atrocities are not forgotten. Their efforts keep the memory alive. This is vital for historical justice. For decades, many governments remained silent about Unit 731. The Cold War context contributed to this silence. The United States in particular had its reasons. They valued the data obtained from Ishii. Acknowledging the deal would have been embarrassing. This silence caused great pain to the victims. The slow process of international acknowledgement has been frustrating. It highlights the complexities of post-war justice. The victims often felt forgotten by the world. Section 9 Lessons from the Abyss. Unit 731's Legacy and the Evolution of Bioethics. Unit 731 serves as a chilling warning to humanity. It shows the terrible potential for science to be misused. When driven by extreme nationalism and militarism, science can become a tool of horror. The researchers at Unit 731 were highly skilled, yet they abandoned all ethical principles. This demonstrates the dangers of unchecked state power. It also shows what can happen when morality is cast aside. We must learn from this dark history. The horrors of Unit 731, along with Nazi experiments, spurred changes. International laws against biological warfare were strengthened. The Biological Weapons Convention of 1972 was a key development. This treaty prohibits the development, production, and stockpiling of biological weapons. It aims to prevent such atrocities from happening again. However, enforcement remains a challenge. The threat of biological weapons still exists today. Vigilance is always necessary. The events of World War II also led to the development of modern medical ethics. The Nuremberg Code was established after the Nazi doctors' trial. This code outlines ethical principles for human experimentation. Informed consent became a cornerstone of medical research. The protection of human subjects is now paramount. Regulations were put in place to ensure research is conducted ethically. Unit 731 stands as a stark example of why these rules are essential. The legacy of Unit 731 demands ongoing vigilance. We must remember what happened at Pingfang. This is crucial to prevent similar atrocities in the future. Education plays a key role in this process. Future generations must learn about these events. They must understand the dangers of hatred and extremism. They must also appreciate the importance of human rights. By confronting the darkest parts of our history, we can strive for a better future. We owe this to the victims.